Hello, my name is Nick Kyriacou, and this is the third mini summary for the President's class. The reading this time is mostly about kind of what happened, especially with the Supreme Courts and their decisions after Brown v. Board, and a lot of the Supreme Court decisions that really got rid of segregation and told schools that they had to resegregate, and it talks about how these policies failed, due largely in part to not only the inaction of Congress, but mainly through Supreme Courts pretty much reversing earlier decisions that they made. So yeah. So perhaps one of the catalysts that really kind of looked into this issue of why our schools are still so segregated today was Gary Orfield's recent study called Schools More Separate, Consequences of a Decade of Resegregation, that really documents how in the 1990s, although initially after Brown v. Board we had this tremendous trend towards eliminating segregation in our school systems, we see that now schools are largely resegregating almost to the point of being worse than they were before Brown v. Board, which is really a scary sight to see. And kind of the report kind of concludes with the fact that our American schools are both separate and unequal, which is really kind of a sad thing in today's society. So this article kind of goes on and really recognizes the fact that while a lot of the resegregation issues can be attributed to both presidential and congressional inaction, the courts have to share a majority of the blame because they were very active in hindering and either further segregating American schools. And kind of the beginning of the article talks about two major Supreme Court decisions that really helped spur resegregation with regards to looking at funding inequities and in rejecting intra-district solutions. So what they said was that it was unconstitutional to, or it was constitutional to allow for schools to be funded differently based on their income levels of their respective neighborhoods, and that it was not constitutional for different schools in different districts to work together to help desegregate their respective populations. So the first court case that really dealt with intra-district resegregation solutions was called Milliken versus Bradley, and then the court case that dealt with funding inequities was called San Antonio Independent School District versus Rodriguez. Okay, and finally, when we ask why the Supreme Court really decided to put an end to desegregation orders, was because, look at this time, when these court decisions took place was in the 80s and 70s, which is when we had a lot of Supreme Court justices, and 90s, which is when we had a lot of Supreme Court justices put in by Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, who were conservative.